Hey there guys, it's Metro, and even though I've quit playing Classic recently, I'm still getting a lot of replies and questions about grinding versus questing to level in Classic. And I realize a lot of the people don't fully understand the nuance here, why it's important, why you might do it, why you wouldn't do it, and they don't seem to understand like that there's actually a trajectory where you would think it's good and then think it's bad within a few levels. So we're gonna do that, and I think the best way to illustrate this is with some like graphs, and I don't really know of any other better way to do it. So it's gonna be like an actual education session at your local school. We got a whiteboard here, but first things first, I do want to bring up 3 reasons that you would typically consider not questing. Okay, there's 3 main reasons that I don't quest at times. I grind instead. Okay. There's one again. Number 1 is danger. Okay. If at any point you're in danger of dying, you should not do that. Okay. Anytime you're dead, you cannot gain experience, and usually you have a pretty long amount of time where you're going to stay dead while you're running back to your body. So this is most prominently because you're doing quests that you're going to die to, but it also could be because of ganking and PvP if you're on a PvP server. Now, you might think like, well, you have an equal chance of getting ganked anywhere in the world, but that is definitely not the case. If you're in a zone where there's a Horde and Alliance hub telling you to kill the same mobs, the likelihood that you're going to end up PvPing there is much, much higher, at least in my experience. So that's one of the reasons why grinding is better on a tangent there, is because you're probably never going to get ganked if you're in the middle of nowhere. If you're in a very common grind spot or an AoE grind spot especially, you might get ganked, but realistically, following a beast route that I would recommend, you would never see another player, very unlikely to see another player, especially the opposite faction. And if they're there, they're probably just there to grind too. They're not going to be wasting their time PvPing you. But anyway, even if you're on a PvE realm, there's still a lot of danger to questing. Mobs run, they have abilities, they call others. These things are very, very bad for experience per hour. You don't want to be dealing with this, and you certainly don't want to be accidentally dying to this. So that's number 1. Number 2 is actually going to be competition, which is another thing a lot of people don't think about when they're questing. But compared to live WoW, seeing other players is a very bad thing at times in Classic. You might say, oh, you just group up and get it done, but oftentimes these quests are going to require you to do something that not everybody gets credit for if you don't do it at once. Now, that didn't seem to be the case when I did some very, very few group quests in Classic. We actually grouped up to do a quest that dropped things that every time it dropped for all 5 people. I don't think that's how it was in Classic, but nonetheless, this is coming from how it was on private servers. So in general, I still think, even in a full group of 5 people, there might still be some competition out there. There might be a 6th person or even another whole group out there waiting for a tag. Or there might just be people who are not willing to group up for these things. So oftentimes you're going to be waiting for respawns. You're going to be waiting for loot to drop. You're going to be killing mobs that you don't need to kill, that are going to be problematic kills, just to get to mobs that you do want to kill. And oftentimes when you do that, you kill 2 mobs to get to 1 mob. Somebody sneaks right in while you're drinking up, waiting for that, they sneak right in on your downtime and get that tag on you, and now you've just wasted a ton of time. So that can't happen while grinding. It's impossible. There's no mob out there that's more valuable than any other mob for grinding. All mobs are created equal in that way, so that doesn't happen. That's number 2. Number 3 is travel. This is my biggest one, not the biggest one out there. I make too big of a deal of it, frankly, but yes, travel is a big part of Classic WoW, and when you're traveling for reasons that are not gaining experience, you are losing experience. So over time, you're going to waste a lot of time traveling, and if you do not know how to maximize that travel, you're going to really lose a lot of time. So, if you're following a guide or something that's telling you where to set your hearth, when to hearth, telling you when to go back and train, when to, where you might want to log out, when you want to go back to turn quests in, So a lot of people who don't follow those types of guides, they just do a quest and go back and turn it in, or, maybe 2 or 3 quests, go back and turn it in. Then they go look for new quests. They don't really have a direction. And then in this case, you are traveling for a much longer period of time than you would be. You'd be traveling for more than actually gaining experience. And that's just crushing your time, right? Now, so those are the 3 reasons that I might not quest and I might grind instead. But it's not just a universal truth. Those things have ups and downs, all 3 of them. So we're going to chart them here on this little whiteboard program. And I'm going to explain to you when you want to stop doing, when you want to grind versus questing, depending on these ups and downs at all 3 of those metrics. But One of the ways people always say you could kind of bend the metrics a bit is by just grinding and questing at the same time. Like if you're going to grind, if you're going to quest, kill any mob in the way to that quest. And again, that sounds like a good idea if you're alone on a server. But realistically, you might not have the availability to do this. The mobs on the way might already be dead. Or the mobs in the camps that you might be questing around might not be viable kills. So it sounds really good on paper because it's kind of best of both worlds. But best of both worlds is not what we want here. We want to pick a situation and dedicate towards it. So that's what I would say. If you're going to grind, grind. If you're going to quest, quest. Don't waste your time killing mobs you don't need. If you're questing, if you think it's the fastest way to level, then that's the way you should level. If you're following a guide that says you should be grinding at times and questing at others, then feel free to follow that. But doing both at the same time never seemed right to me. I always sit down and dedicate towards a couple hours of grinding or get in the headspace for questing. And one of the best things about grinding, frankly, is that you can literally turn your brain off. You have absolutely no mental effort required. If you're grinding the right types of mobs, that is. And it's very, honestly, for me, very satisfying. A lot of people call it very boring, but I find it very satisfying. I can literally just watch a stream or a video or, anything else on my computer, and I can even play other games. I mean, in the past, I've been playing a Pokemon game while playing WoW and gaining full EXP per hour based on grinding. So anyway, the other maybe things that people might think is that grinding is bad experience. It's not, okay, just factually incorrect to say that. Look at how much experience you get from a kill, and then look at how much experience you get from a quest. Most quests at the early range are going to give maybe 2,000 to 5,000 experience. It depends, too much to say, but just look at it. Usually a quest might be like, say, 2,500 experience, and it's going to ask you to kill 15 mobs. You gained more experience from the kills of those mobs than you did from turning the quest in. Now, you might say, well, that's just double the experience. I was going to kill the mobs anyway, blah, blah, blah. But those are the three reasons are why that's not true. Danger of the mobs, travel to and from the mobs, and to turn the quest in and go back. And then, of course, competition, right? So if any of those three things slow you down, then you're not going to want to do those quests. Now, let's talk a little bit more about when and where these things come up. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about danger, okay? So danger is going to be, let's see, we can change the color, right? Danger is going to be red, okay? So when you're leveling up, so we got 0 to pre-raid BIS charted on the x-axis, and the y-axis is going to be the danger level, okay? So when you start out, danger level is extremely low, like extremely low, right? Level 0, pretty much everything in the game is going to be pretty easy to kill. 0 through 5, you're basically outscaling everything you're fighting naked. Like you literally don't even need gear, okay? And then around level 10, it's going to plateau a bit here, okay? It's going to go slightly up, but it's going to plateau pretty hard at 10. And this is going to depend heavily on what gear you have. By this point, you might have gotten some really good items, especially from the auction house. One of the best ways to combat these problems is with high spirit early. The more spirit you have, the less downtime you're going to have, allowing you to quest or grind faster. So it's just, if you have good, high amount of spirit, or you've gotten a couple pieces by level 10 to 15-ish, you're going to be in good shape. But after that, things start to get a little bit harder. So I'd say there's pretty much a gradual increase by the time you're at 20, okay? Pretty big peak here. At 20, you're going to start to get a lot stronger. A lot of classes get a lot stronger at 20. Some don't, okay? And depending on the quests and whatever else you have available for your classes talent-wise and spell-wise, 20 could either be the worst time or the best time. For me, as a paladin, I feel like it's the worst time. So it peaks even higher as a paladin, but it depends on the class, obviously. Then from 20 to 30, things get to be a little bit more consistent. So I would say they continue to go up, but then around 30 is when they start to kind of hit their peak, okay? So at 30, things, from like 25 to 30, things are probably pretty consistent. But then as you start getting from 30 and onward, you're finding yourself in zones that are more populated and almost always more dangerous because of that. Whether or not it's just the competition making it harder to do the quests or just the PvP if you're on a PvP server, think about the famous level 30 to 40 zones, right? I don't even need to name them all. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So from 30 to about 35-ish, I think it takes a big jump. Okay, and again, these are just my opinions. I don't have any actual facts of this. I don't think anybody could really plot any facts of this. But around 30, 34, because you train big spells at 30, and then they don't really get any stronger until you train them again, and things kind of go down. Especially, this is a great example for Paladin. Judgment of Light at level 30, extremely strong. You literally never die with it from 30. And then by the time you're 38, you haven't trained it again. So it's getting worse and worse and worse. So danger is just getting higher and higher and higher until about 39. Then it reaches its peak. And then at 40, it starts to really fall. Okay, so this is where I'd say things really plateau. The highest peak you'll see is at 40. And then things kind of just go down and down and down until about 55-ish. And then I would say they would go back up pretty substantially. And then, of course, after 60, they plummet, right? Once you're in pre-raid, you're pretty much not challenged by anything in the world anymore. So this is obviously a rudimentary, but a good way of exemplifying the issue, okay? So if you're on the side that thinks danger is not a problem for me, it's probably the case that you haven't gotten to that point yet, okay? Or you could also be extremely skilled at the game. If that's the point, you don't need my advice on leveling. But either way, from about 10 to 22-ish, I would say there's not really much danger out there questing. So that's not really a big problem. But then from about 25-ish to about 39-ish, it gets really bad, right around here, okay? And it's the highest it's ever really going to get right before you ding 40. And the reason is, at 40, you get a spec-defining set of abilities. Let's put it that way. You usually get incredibly impactful talents. Obviously, the level 40 talent is always the top of the tier. Sometimes you're playing a spec like Rep Pally, and it doesn't give you anything. But yeah, a lot of specs out there defined by their max level talent, their fury, etc., bloodthirst. And then also at 40, you get really big increases to most spells training wise. You'll be able to train some of the best ranks of spells are usually at level 40 and onward. And then also a lot of classes are going to go up on armor tier at level 40. And that's huge. I mean, especially as a warrior or a paladin. But definitely a warrior. Warrior's level 40 is like you might as well have dinged 60 because it's so much better than like level 20 or something like that. So anyway, that's really the peak of your danger is going to be right at 40. So now let's talk about travel, okay? This is another obvious one. Travel is going to be green on our chart, okay? Travel is actually really consistent for a lot of classes. For quite a while, okay? From about probably 0 to 10, obviously nothing's going to happen at all. It's not going to increase or go up or down. The zones you're going to be in are going to be very small. There's not a lot of travel back and forth, side to side, and there's very little leaving the zone. Obviously, you're not leaving the zone until 10. But at this point, things take a pretty big turn. To get from 10 to 20, you can't do it all in one zone. If you played live WoW, BFA, etc., you know that you can level from long range, a long span of talent, or a long span of level ups in a single zone. You can't do that in Classic if you're going to quest, so that's a big problem. So if you're going to be traveling a lot to quest, you're going to see a dramatic increase to probably about here-ish, okay? Then it's going to plateau. Once you get to about 18, you're going to finish 18 to 20 in the same zone, okay? And then again, you're going to see another increase from 20 to 30. You're going to have to continue traveling to even more zones. To get from 20 to 30, you're going to be in probably about 5 or 6 zones if you're questing. And of course, those are going to take you to different continents. So this is all considered, right? So there's a little plateau. It continues to rise. And then from 30 to 40, the zones are a lot more compact. They're a lot closer to each other. A lot of the places you would quest are actually really, they're pretty close, and there's not a lot of travel between them. But you're still seeing some increase in the travel times, okay? And but it's going to be mitigated because by this point, a lot of classes are going to be getting increases to their speed. Around this point, your druid and paladin and I guess hunter, others, shamans, they get things that are increasing their actual speed. So it's going to be abated a bit. If none of those existed, like if you're playing like a warlock who doesn't have any type of speed increase, it's literally just going to be a sharp line up. That's why there's these plateaus, because you're assuming that you're gaining speed along the way from some talents. But if you're playing something like a warlock, you literally never gain a single spell that increases your speed or a single, nothing like that. Then it's just a straight line up. And then at 40, or whenever you get the mount, it goes way down, okay? Like so down that probably I wouldn't say it plateaus until maybe about 55. At 55, you have to start scrambling, okay? and then you're probably going to start, you know, around 60. Obviously, then it's over. But anyway, that's the big problem there, okay? So you're going to have to scramble a bit here, but otherwise it's just going to be a steady increase. And at 40 or whatever you get your mount, it goes down substantially. So again, you'll see here at around 40, basically whenever you get the mount, it's going to drop substantially because now you're going to be traveling, even though you'll still be traveling from zone to zone, you're still going to be traveling from quest to quest twice as fast, or 60% faster, provided you're using the mount. Now, if you never get the mount, that changes things. Some classes level without a mount, Druid and Shaman. I think a lot of people don't even get mounts. I think I've seen Rogue and Hunter do it as well. But either way, that's provided you get them out. At that point, things change. And then finally, of course, we have competition. Now, this is not really a concern for a lot of people on a lot of different realms, but it is a concern for a lot of people on really high populated realms or realms with really high, like more Horde than Alliance, stuff like that. Either way, I expected there to be a lot more competition in Classic because when I played on Nostarius, it was really bad. Like, so bad that it was the defining reason why I stopped doing quests and why I started grinding exclusively. So that's not really the case here, but it definitely, it can still happen. And that's mostly not the case because of the layering feature, right? The layering feature is keeping a lot of people away from others. And it's good and bad, I guess, but in general, the way it's played on Official Classic is considerably different than the way it played on Nostarius and Elysium and all those servers that I played on. So this one's kind of like, if you could make a case for me being biased or unfair about this topic, this would be the place that you could do it, okay? But either way, competition is going to be actually at its highest at level 0, effectively. It depends on the server, right? Like, if you're on a server that has just launched and everybody's level 0, then level 1 or whatever, then it's the top of the chart, right? So let's just like make a little dot there just to say like it could be up here, but by the time you're watching this video, it probably won't be. So we'll actually start it in the middle here because competition in some of the early zones is actually more important than some of the later zones. It's kind of interesting because typically the early zones are something that people don't want to leave. You know what I mean? They don't want to go from zone to zone, and that's because of how travel is integrated into this. But typically, the person who is in Dun Morogh is not leaving Dun Morogh until they no longer gain experience from it. So for that reason, I would start it at about 50% up the chart until probably, and slight increase until probably about 20. Okay. At 20, things start to open up a lot more. You are going to have to go to more zones. But if you're an Alliance, for example, and you start in, say, Westfall, and you go to, if you start in Elwood Forest and you go to Westfall, this is what it's going to look like for you. If you follow the trajectory that most humans are going to follow, you're going to see a lot of competition. And then at 20, it's going to take a pretty big dive to probably about 25%, okay? 20 to onward to 30, it's going to get pretty good. Those zones from 20 to 30 are usually not as populated because people start spreading out. More so, people just fall off. Like, all the people start in the zones and they don't make it to the next set. I mean, there's people I know who have been regularly playing Classic and they're still not even level 40 after 4 weeks. So that's fine. Take your time. I don't really care, but I'm just saying that that's the way it's going to be. So at this point, though, it's going to take another big jump, okay? Again, we've talked about the level 30 to 40 zones. They're some of the most popular zones in the game. They're when a lot of people really considered the game to really open up. So again, it's going to take a huge jump up here. I'd say even higher. It's going to go even higher than it was earlier. To get to about 40, you're going to be in zones like Stranglethorn. So honestly, I would say it's probably up to like that. I mean, much higher, probably about 10% higher than it even starts at. You're going to see a lot of people in these zones. And of course, you're going to see a lot of the other faction in these zones. But then at this point, it really starts to plateau. And I would say it would even start to drop. About the level range, about 43, you can really have done a lot of different zones. There's a lot of stuff in Dustwall. There's a lot of stuff in Tenaris. There's a lot of stuff in Feralus. There's a lot of stuff in the Badlands. There's even things like you could start thinking about Searing Gorge. A lot of these zones are very spread out. They don't have a lot of quests, but you pretty much need to do them if you're going to quest, right? So at this point, things start to really decline again, okay? Luckily they kind of keep declining until the end of the game. Like, At 60, you might, like around like 58, you might find some competition again. But from my experience, it never really changes. And then, of course, it doesn't even matter at this point. Pre-raid, it doesn't really matter. So anyway, you're gonna see a little bit of a trend here, right? Where is the time that seems to be the decrease for all four specs, or for all three? Sorry, four specs for all three metrics. Okay, it's about at 43. Okay, so we're drawing a line here. Okay, at this point, we're on the steady decline in all three of these things. All right, I hope that makes sense now, because the reason I'm making this video essentially is because I said I want to grind until about 43, and then I'm going to start questing. And they're like, well, like basically they couldn't understand that logic, right? I was like, no, this is intended, okay? These things generally fluctuate, but they go overall up for about 40 levels, and then they go down. So for my preference, as long as I enjoy grinding, which I do, I will grind 1 to 40 around the time you get your mount. Usually it's about 43 if you're not a paladin or you don't already have gold saved up. You'll usually get it a couple levels in. You probably won't get it immediately at 40. So I'll continue grinding from 40 to 42-ish. The real reason I used to grind to about 43 was because there was these elite whelps that I actually made a video on Ace Games TV about, especially. Those are not in the game in Official Classic because apparently, I don't know. Let's not get into it. But anyway, they're not there. So the grind spot from 40 to 43 is not very good anymore. It used to be the best in the game. Grinding from 40 to 43 was just objectively faster than anything else you can do because of those elite whelps. They're no longer elites or bugged or whatever you want to call them, like they were on the Stars. So it's no longer viable. So it's just as good as any other option, like it always is. But at this point, quests start to gain even more experience. If we could chart a fourth thing, we would probably, we can probably do it, right? Let's go say, and we'll quest experience, okay? So quest experience starts 0. It's basically useless until probably about level 10. I would say maybe it gets slightly better by that point, and then it probably rises kind of steadily until about 25-ish, and then it kind of plateaus again. Again, from 25 to about 40-ish, I would say it's kind of plateaued. And then at this point, it just like that. It's just huge increase. Quest experience starts going way up, and the mobs don't give you any more. You know what I mean? They're not giving you any more. The big thing, at about 30-ish, you start getting a lot more breadcrumbs. And if you follow a guide, the breadcrumbs are massively important for questing, like efficiently. If you don't get these breadcrumbs that are usually in completely other zones, maybe in other continents, you're going to really level slow with questing. That's the main thing. You don't have to be traveling back and forth to get these at all times. If you follow a guide, it's going to tell you when and where to get them. So it's stuff like that that you really need to be thinking about. And I hope this made it clear. It's probably too much of a ramble, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out there and hopefully elucidate the topic and why I would grind from 1 to about 43. And why you should do the same. The final thing I'll say here is if you're looking at this months in the future and there's no concerns with new realms or anything like that, a lot of this doesn't really matter anymore because the player base is going to be moved on to such a degree that you can probably have 0 competition, and the only danger you would have would be the quests themselves. There's probably not going to be a lot of ganking, probably not going to be a lot of people doing quests. All that is going to be just gone. But I don't know for sure, okay? But if I was to recommend one thing, I would say, are you 100% sure that you will level faster questing, following whatever, doing something that isn't grinding? Are you 100% sure? If the answer is not, I'm 100% sure, then don't do it. Grind instead. It's much better. You're going to get way more gold per hour. Ironically, you're going to get way better gear because you're going to have so much extra money. You're going to be able to buy a bunch of really good BOEs. And you could even, if there's 1 or 2 quests out there that you really want to do, you can do it. I'm just suggesting don't do both. You're wasting a lot of time if you're not 100% dedicated to a route. And I think even a lot of guides out there are going to be like, oh, grind for 30 minutes and then continue questing. It's like, just grind. You can come back to the quests when they're easier, eliminate the danger, eliminate the travel, something like that. Just think about that. So hopefully this makes it clear for you guys. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.